Class is now in session. I'm Professor Hockey, and today we'll be discussing the game between the Sharks and the Coyotes, in which the Sharks managed to win 4-2, now putting themselves in a top 3 spot in the Pacific Division, leapfrogging the Vegas Golden Knights and finding themselves just 3 points behind the team they faced tonight, the Arizona Coyotes, and only 4 points behind the leading Pacific Division team, the Edmonton Oilers. And so after such an awful October, with this game against the Coyotes, the Sharks have capped off what was a spectacular November, one of the best Novembers in franchise history even. Martin Jones putting up 10 wins during this month, and it's just been such a complete black and white style turnaround here for this team. If you told me that the team in October would end up winning this many games in November, I would never have believed you in a million years, and yet here we are. But this game didn't start off like that. The Coyotes came out with 2 very quick goals just in the first couple of minutes from Schmaltz and Stepan. And it really just looked like the Sharks were just completely not ready to start this game, because these weren't just 2 ordinary goals. These were goals where both of these Coyotes forwards were completely uncovered. They were left alone for so much time that they could have probably built a house before actually having to take this shot on what was a more or less wide open net for them. And so the Sharks just looked so lost to start, and it didn't look like the game would end up going the way it did. But after that, the Sharks really cleaned things up. They ended up with the only other goal in the first period from Couture to make it 2-1. And there was a stat that after trailing at the end of a first period, when the Sharks have been trailing, they have not yet won a game this season, but that has now changed in the second period. It was mostly all Sharks controlled. They got goals from Gambrell and Meyer to make it 3-2, and they managed to hold the lead in the third period, barring just a couple of scares, and would eventually cap it off with a Couture empty netter to win 4-2. And the first thing to talk about would be their goaltender, Martin Jones, as he starts back-to-back games here, which was one of the biggest surprises, if not the biggest surprises of the night. I really thought Dell would get this start. I understand Dell was not very good against the Winnipeg Jets in the end, and Jones was quite good against the Kings just yesterday. But still, you very rarely see DeBoer go for aggressive play like this to start their goaltender back-to-back. I understand the Sharks do also have a couple days off before their next game, but still. And it didn't look like a great choice after those first 2 goals, even though Jones had basically no chance on either of them. But he ended up cleaning things up. He ended up playing a very good game for the rest of it, including a spectacular save in the I guess rather early third period on Brad Richardson, just an insane blocker save to keep the very fragile 1-goal lead alive, which would end up lasting for the rest of the game. So a great game for Martin Jones. As I said, he's had a spectacular November. He has really turned things around, and normally this past season, as well as the start of this year, Jones has sometimes managed to string a couple of good games together before going back to where, he's below average. But right now it's been 4 or 5 games where Jones has actually been playing at a really high level, and so he's definitely trending upwards, and I think it's no coincidence that the Sharks seem to be trending upwards at the same time as their starting goaltender. Next, I will talk about the fourth line, and as we saw tonight, Antti Suomela did not get to play here. He is indeed injured. We don't know how long that is actually going to be, but it was pretty disappointing considering the fourth line was quite strong against the Kings just yesterday, and so we didn't know what we were going to come to expect from the fourth line tonight, but they actually were quite impressive, as 2 games in a row where the fourth line has scored a goal, which is not something I ever expected to say this season, and yet here we are living in this crazy world, and it was very impressive fourth line performance from this team, and hopefully this has been an issue for the Sharks this season, not talked about as much as, let's say, the power play or the even strength, but it certainly has been more of a minor issue, and it'll be good if the Sharks can iron out something like this, because there have been so many combinations of fourth line. There have been so many players fighting for this spot who haven't really been doing all that much, but finally we're seeing something from Gregor, finally we're seeing something from Gambrell, and it can only mean good things for the Sharks moving forward. Next, I would talk about Barclay Goodrow, and is there a player on the Sharks this season who has been more surprising than Barclay Goodrow? I think the only 2 players who I would even nominate for that would be potentially Ferraro as well as Patrick Marleau. Both those players I did not expect to be as solid as they have been, but Goodrow has surpassed every single expectation of mine. He has been a solid forward even in the top 6 for the San Jose Sharks. He again got close to 19 minutes tonight, which, you take a look back just last season, he would barely get to 10 minutes on most nights, and now he's getting double-digit minutes, very high teen double-digit minutes. He's just been so good for the Sharks on the penalty kill, at even strength, defensively. Barclay Goodrow just probably the most bargain contract at this point, barring any ELCs for the San Jose Sharks. Even, most people take a look at LeBank's contract, 1 year, $1 million. What a fantastic contract. But Goodrow's, who's making even less than $1 million, almost is looking slightly better than that. And it'll actually be very interesting to see what Goodrow gets on his next contract, because this is certainly a career year for him. Finally, I will talk about Marc-Edouard Vlasic. I have spent a lot of time mentioning Erik Karlsson and how he's managed to turn a leaf in this season. He's been very, very good for these past 6 games. But I think a lot of credit also has to go to Vlasic, not because Vlasic has sort of been the crutch for Karlsson to lean on, and that's why Karlsson has been so much better, but because Vlasic himself also did not have a very good start to this year, but he has been so much better in these past few games. He led the team in ice time here tonight, but more than both Burns and Karlsson, who almost always have that title this season. But Vlasic has just been so calm, so steady defensively, something we really haven't seen since maybe 2016, the year the Sharks made it to the Stanley Cup Finals. That was a fantastic year for Vlasic. But in 16-17, he was pretty good. 17-18 was pretty good as well. 18-19 fell off a bit, but now here in 19-20, after a poor start, he's been so much better, and we're finally seeing this duo of Vlasic and Karlsson actually work. It's been a duo I've mentioned multiple times that the Sharks have tried to get to work, but it has never really worked out. So Vlasic has found himself back with Braun at times, or was last season, and Karlsson had found himself with Dylan last season, and again with Dylan this season. But now that these two are finally working together, as you can see, I put them as the top defensive pairing here for the Sharks, because they have certainly been playing as such. I mean, just take a look when the Sharks were killing off these 6-on-5 for the Coyotes. Normally you would see them send out Burns, and I guess probably Vlasic as well in those last few minutes, but now all of a sudden it's Vlasic and Karlsson taking up that role. But that will do it for this review. The Sharks will be back in action on Tuesday. They will face off against the Washington Capitals, who you could definitely make the argument is the best team in the league. I believe they are first place in the league, maybe competing somewhere with Boston. But basically, the point is they are an extremely strong team, likely the best team that the Sharks have played so far this season. Again, competing with Boston, potentially competing with the Islanders, who the Sharks managed to win 2-1 against in overtime. But going to be a very, very tough game. Tough shooters like Vrana, Ovechkin, obviously, Kuznetsov, Backstrom, Oshie. John Karlsson is having the season of his career for the Washington Capitals. So not going to be an easy game, and we'll see if the Sharks can come out on top. Class dismissed.